Welcome to the podcast of Torres Consulting. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the podcast of Torres Consulting. I have the pleasure today of having here Elga Castro, around 20 years of professional experience working, managing teams, revenue management throughout Europe. Elga, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks very much. It's my pleasure to have you here today. Elga, which mixes revenue management, as I'm saying, as her full role, and also she is a teacher and lecturer in different institutions. So we're going to go into there at the end of the conversation, as we usually do, talk about the education and the future of the industry. But first things first, as always, I like to go back in time and ask you, how did you go into hospitality, and then why revenue?
Yes, well, we backtrack quite a few years, to be honest. As you said, close to 20 years experience so far in hospitality. And as you can gather from my accent, I started off in the UK. However, I was an adopted revenue manager or an adopted hotelier, as I never thought I'd end up in this world. I started off as a teacher, and actually during my undergraduate years, I had the opportunity of working in different roles in the back office, mostly operational. And that got me in touch with the very few hints of the hospitality industry in the UK. But I completely disregarded the option and went back to teaching until I was 26 years old, roughly, when I took a minute to think twice about what my professional career would be as a teacher for the upcoming 40 years, and then decided to give it a halt. So I looked at the pros and cons and analyzed what I really wanted to do. And funnily enough, thanks to who's my husband today, I jumped into the hospitality industry, but I went straight into a reservations office. And shortly after becoming the top sales manager of that back office in one of the most emblematic hotels in Oxford, after just 3 months or something like that, I started to give that a second thought. When eventually it was just going to be a temporary role, I decided to give it, a deeper thought and go for the long run. And so I got closer to those that were starting to talk back in 2002 about revenue management and what could we do in the back office in terms of yield management. What could we do to impact and influence on the demand behavior? That really caught my eye, as opposed to what can you do out there in the sales field to generate or to steer demand, which I wasn't too much of a fish of that pond, so to speak. I wasn't that outspoken. I wasn't that bubbly. So I thought, no, let's go the safer route and let's look into all this that these people are talking about, yield management. And that's essentially how I got in touch with this, fascinating world for me, I can't say the least. Hand in hand with top professionals at the time in the UK, considering revenue management was really taking off the beginning of the 2000s in the UK. So ex-Marriott professionals and those who were, who had been in the discipline for quite some time. So this granted my best and most solid steps, I would say, into the discipline. And then by 2006, I decided for personal reasons to move back to Spain. And it was funny because at the time it wasn't a very popular role. So looking for a revenue manager's position in the multiple job lists was quite challenging. Nevertheless, I did come across an opportunity, and I got accepted at Vincci Hotels, who was the first hotel chain in Spain, privately owned, fabulous hotel chain, to start my revenue management career and my hospitality career in Spain. And that's how really I got not only to implement what I have learned in the UK in the revenue management discipline, but also learn from, hoteliers on the spot, and how could I apply that learning onto my discipline. And that's what I did for 7.5 years in revenue management, but also e-commerce and distribution, since it was a privately owned, I would say mid-sized small hotel chain. So multitasking was kind of our to do at the time. So after 7.5 years of taking this hotel chain to the next level, mostly in revenue management and distribution and e-commerce, as I said, this fast speed train hit my door, which was NH, and I decided to give it a go. So back in 2013, I decided to join NH Hotel Group, which at the time was when a new CEO was brought on board, and therefore a new full plan, full development plan in all scales was actually rolled out. So revenue management was one of the key pillars of that plan for the company, that development plan. And at the time, I got offered the position as Director of Revenue Management for Spain and Portugal, which at the time equated to 100 and roughly 80 properties. Okay. Yes, quite a big leap and a leap of faith, I have to say, for those who hired me, but obviously saw the hunger for growth and passion about hospitality. So throughout these years, it's not just about balancing what I've learned from working with multicultural human capital. It's also about having the great opportunity to teach, as you said a while ago. So I've been going back to my original passion, which was teaching, but about a completely different discipline, which is revenue management. And I had the opportunity of doing so in the university here in Madrid, Rey Juan Carlos, and also in Galicia. So yeah, quite a speedy, move forward, and definitely an enjoyable ride after all.
Quite an adventure, absolutely. So now your full title is Senior Director of Revenue Management, Business Unit Southern Europe, which is a very long name. What does it mean? So what do you have to do on a daily basis to fulfill that role?
Mm-hmm. Indeed, yes. After 2.5 years in the leader position for Spain, the company decided to merge business units, so to speak, the traditional business units at the time, and therefore Italy's portfolio was merged with Spain, Portugal, and France, and that's actually the business units that I'm heading right now. And what this entitles on a day-to-day basis for me is actually being capable of mixing the management of this huge human capital and multicultural human capital, not only throughout my immediate team. Obviously, I have a group of regional support, but also a direct team that enables me to establish, to monitor, and ensure that the strategy, not only the short-term strategy, but also the long-term pricing strategy, is implemented and followed across the 184 hotels that we currently have and growing. So definitely a fascinating daily routine that is never a routine, because if life isn't the same in a single hotel from one day to the next, you can imagine how it is across all main destinations in Italy, Spain, Portugal, and France, and the US, which is the latter addition to the portfolio. We closed this asset for complete refurbishment, so a huge investment and effort for NH Hotel Group to reopen as a top and collection property, so luxury property in the middle of Manhattan. So again, leading a really exciting adventure here.
Really interesting. 184 hotels. And you were mentioning before, you were doing e-commerce and distribution. And I wanted to ask you about that. So revenue, marketing, sales, they used to be very compartmentalized. Now you're mentioning that many years ago, you already started kind of merging and working together. And now there's a lot of talk about that, about how much more revenue and sales should be working together. So what is your view on that?
Yeah, having moved from, as I said earlier, a smaller company where these roles were not as siloed as they are in a large company like NH, with these disciplines being led by either sales or marketing, as opposed to pricing, which is the core discipline of the revenue management team in NH. But having worked in that other side of the story, balancing these three disciplines in one single role, comes to prove that obviously a revenue manager needs a complete profile. You can only just not be an expert on pricing and forecasting, but you need to have a holistic view about what and how the demand behaves. For instance, you could have the best pricing strategy, that could be analyzed by Harvard. If you can't get it across your distribution channels, then you might as well forget about it. So you need to understand the always evolving distribution map and how that impacts on how effective your pricing strategy can or cannot be. So this is why it's essential for us, even though we're not directly in charge of the discipline in NH, we must understand the impact of the decision, both in the tactical short-term pricing decisions that we make or the long-term strategies that are designed for the future. And this is where revenue managers and the revenue management discipline per se within NH has a pivotal role, because we need to keep a constant communication and alignment with our colleagues from the sales and marketing in order to ensure that whatever we envision as the correct pricing strategy is communicated to our customers and is within reach of our customers through the right channels in an optimal way.
So would it be revenue, I wouldn't say dictating, but leading marketing in how the strategy should go then?
I wouldn't say as much as leading. I would say it's a level pegging decision, meaning it's something where we need to be completely aligned. So nobody better than marketing in our case and sales to understand what our demand needs. What are they looking for? How to segment them or micro segment them, or are we moving towards single pricing demand? So it is that information is actually captured and filtered by our sales and marketing disciplines in both B2B and B2C segments, and then we work single-handedly in what we think is the best pricing strategy that needs to be assigned to each of these customers, and again hand in hand with the commercial discipline to ensure that we have the best distribution strategy. We have the best companions in our distribution strategy, who are online partners, our offline partners, who is going to help us deliver the qualitative distribution. Because of course we have a strong brand recognition, and that is obviously a great effort also driven from our marketing department. But we need to have side by side with us those qualitative partners that will help us enhance and enrich our distribution.
Okay, noted. Alignment then, it's the key. Good. So now we are on this. I mean, a lot of people talk about post-pandemic. I don't think we are post-pandemic. Probably we're going to be post-vaccine very soon. So whatever the name is, there's going to be people talk about different tiers when it comes to business hotels and leisure hotels, or corporate and leisure. So what is your view on that recovery? Well,
surprisingly, we were all expecting leisure properties to behave, I would say, during the pandemic a bit better, because obviously we can't talk about full normalized times again, but there is still demand moving around. And when we envisioned our recovery plan, we were thinking maybe on a high component of leisure-driven customers, but it's not the case. We have successfully reopened hotels after the first wave of the pandemic, and across many different countries, of course, at different speeds, but we reopened our hotels with a clear plan per segment and per channel and per, I would say, per phase within that recovery plan. However, we were surprised at the fact that many of our destinations have managed to keep open thanks to the support of those B2B segments, meaning the transient corporate customer has kept himself loyal to our brand and on the increase. Also the small and medium accounts, or even those individual corporate customers, self-employed who have recurrently stayed at our properties and have managed to enable us to actually stay open as much as the demand coming from the leisure segments. So it has been a nice surprise for us. And again, this has enabled that, for instance, for Bouze, today we are talking at over 67% of our hotels are open. And we have just this Saturday reopened our flagship hotel, the Euro Building, with over 400 rooms, which takes a lot to, to optimize.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And to maximize and to make profitable, because at the end of the day, you don't reopen hotels if you have the slightest hint it's not going to be profitable. So this is what has struck us from the, I would say, post first wave of the pandemic. And nevertheless, we've also had some additional demand coming from leisure segments for sure. Help throughout the summer, and that was clearly diagnosed after particularly the UK's announcements were made about the travel safety corridors and which countries were, were allowed to definitely made a difference. However, being clearly reactive to that demand, to those spikes, we were obviously suffering the immediate consequences from the leisure demand whenever the restrictions were actually heavier. And this is what happened entirely with Portugal, for instance, in the Algarve and some of the Mediterranean destinations that we manage. And this is what we are seeing right now. We are seeing a pent-up demand that after the announcements made by Boris Johnson, reacted actually very promptly to book their summer holiday without a clear view yet as to what is going to happen with the pandemic. Fingers crossed, it will be the start of our recovery, because that's when the leisure component will strongly come back. There is an inherent quality to the human being, which is we need to travel, we need to move around, and that will always be there. Hence, our projections about pent-up demand and the bottled up demand. But it's actually behaved different to what we were expecting. So first, the B2B individual transient corporate customers, and then the leisure. And then we will see in a latter stage, obviously, the tour operators coming back, the international demand coming up, but it will be at a much slower pace than what we originally estimated.
Thanks. I was taking notes. Thanks for useful information. Changing topics now. Historically, the hotel industry is not very famous for investing in technology, so we kind of always look at the airline industry like, oh wow, they invented revenue, and so hotel industry is not really an early adopter of technology. So again, I'd like to get your view on that, and how is that evolving now?
It is kind of true, I would say. It's not entirely true, but it's kind of true that hoteliers are a bit reluctant to invest in technology, or have been over the last few years, I would say. Again, this depends on the profile of hotel company you're looking at. Of course, those that throughout the green years of the upward trend in the economy were savvy enough to see what was coming, or to predict that sooner or later there would be a downward spiral, and they needed to speed up in terms of digital transformation, did their homework, and some of them did invest. However, others, as you say, were reluctant and will always be. We can't forget that traditional markets like Spain or Italy are very fragmented. So you have a lot of independents and small chains. However, on the other hand, you do have the big players in the market and the big players in the field that also throughout the optimal years of the upward trend in the last economy cycle were savvy enough to invest. And those that were already predicting a change in this cycle already laid a very solid foundation. So either updating their PMS systems, both back and front, their finance systems, even introducing digitalization across some of the main areas in the hotels, like check-in and check-out processes, in restaurants and so on and so forth. When it comes to revenue management, we again talk about different speeds. Why? Because there's always been an Excel spreadsheet and a revenue manager who can work its magic, his or her magic, and get things to kind of be optimized in a slightly better way than how it used to be done in the past. However, we need technology, and we need a strong technological support in revenue management more than ever. And again, those that have invested and have looked for a qualitative partner to understand these very uncertain times and how to move forward and how can we evolve in pricing will obviously take the lead in the post-COVID or post-pandemic or post-fourth wave, however we want to call that. Why? Because throughout a year and 3 months of the pandemic so far, a year and a few months, we already have a different behavioral statistics than what we've accumulated from the past. This having the strong support of the technology behind that can help you focus on what really is important is key, meaning technology can support you on the projections, on reacting on pricing where the revenue manager cannot focus right now. And this is where anything to do with automation is for us, at least in the future. It will help the revenue managers focus either on the very short-term to tactical pricing or in the overall strategy and steer the lead of these technological platforms that support us. Whereas we will let the technology do the hard work for us. It's not about pulling and managing tons of data. It's about working on the outcome and the analysis and strategy to be built on the back of that data. So proactively using that myriad of information that we work every day with, anticipating what our demand is going to be doing in either in the short or the long term, and adapting more recurrently our strategy, our pricing strategy in this sense, and obviously moving along with us all sales and marketing plans that we need.
So again, going back to being aligned with them, but in this case, using technology and the automation of getting information. Brilliant. I want to touch also based on one of your passions, which is education, was the original career, to touch base on the training of the teams in the industry. Again, the tourism industry is not famous for investing much on training. That's changing as well, as the same with technology. But what is your view also from the side that you are a teacher and you see how people evolve and education is evolving during the years?
Mm-hmm. It is definitely has changed quite a bit in the last few years. Having stepped into this discipline quite a few years ago, I can see the evolution both in the profile of the students and what is covered already at university level, and also how these students and how these undergraduates start in the working environment and what actually do they expect from revenue management and what do they find. Keeping in mind as well that the discipline itself is constantly changing. We have incorporated different strategies. We have incorporated heavily technology into our role. Again, we need to be on top of the demand behavioral changes. We need to understand what the colleagues in other disciplines do as well in terms of sales and distribution, and also even down to the profit line. So definitely operational and full P&L scope of what we are handling, which is obviously a lot of hotels and a lot of rooms on a daily basis. But again, the profile of the revenue manager is evolving, and also the expectations and the preparation these students are coming out from university with. So it really depends on what are they looking for. Are they looking for a more statistical, mathematical approach in revenue management, which, for instance, a business performance manager in a business unit would be supporting us with? Are they looking more in terms of understanding what and how an algorithm of a system thinks? How does the core of our PMS talk to the different channels and talk to our revenue management system. Therefore, that will be a revenue manager's system role more than anything else. Or are they looking to have their fingers in the pot and in the pie and managing the business on a day-to-day basis, and therefore handle hotels and being supported by the other roles? So meaning making the decisions, building those tactical pricing decisions on a day-to-day basis, and also the long term, and putting them into practice, and then also analyzing and understanding the consequences of those decisions. So it's a vast array of roles you can look at today. And what I see in the profiles, day in and day out that come in for an interview is, and what has to be a must is the hunger for optimization, the hunger for business, and also the constant critical self-criticism to believe that you can do better and better every day. So there's always a way you could have optimized and squeezed that additional euro out of your inventory, which is perishable. So that constant auto-criticism and ability to take criticism, sometimes a bit harshly, because again, it's a very tough role. But that attitude is key. So this is one of my key lines whenever I interview somebody. It's about your attitude and being eager to learn and eager to apply your learnings, because it never stops. You may have optimized yesterday, again, as if it was a Harvard business case, but you have another day ahead of you with another X amount of perishable rooms in your hands. How are you going to deal with that today? And times that by the number of days in a year, and so on and so forth. So that's eager and passion for the industry, and also the empathy with understanding what is behind our decision. So how does that impact in something as untangible as the quality perceived by a customer who purchases one of our products? Okay, analyzing the quality, we can also understand whether a customer is accepting the pricing we put out there in the market or not. Are we being too ambitious? Are we, do we manage to outperform our competitive set? So it's this eagerness to learn, this eagerness to always do better and always learn from yourself, from your experience, but also from what happens around you. Because if one thing we have learned over the years is also the fact that we can copy paste some of the strategies and some of the learnings to similar behaving hotels, and obviously impact enormously in what could be the profitability of a given hotel.
Okay, so being able to be willing, to self-criticize, you were saying, is the attitude, the eagerness to keep improving and challenge themselves on a daily basis. Okay, noted there.
Indeed.
One last question I have for you, and it's about, it's a challenging time, especially I'm put myself in the feet of someone who's studying now hospitality or revenue management, for example. They're finishing their studies and they're like, wow, but what good timing, yeah? So what do we tell those?
Daunting, to say the
Yeah,
least.
exactly, yeah. So that, let's say, young profile, 21 to 22-year-old, finishing now their career or their master's, and so, what do I do now? Where do I look for an opportunity?
Well, I'd say never to give up. And it's funny I should say that, because I swapped careers, and even though I'm still teaching, it is not the main core of what I do on a day-to-day basis. But if you are a true believer of hospitality as your passion, and within hospitality, obviously, I can't say the least, I'm biased for revenue management. If you are passionate about revenue management, there will always be a discipline or an area in the service industry where you can optimize. As long as you have perishable inventory, there is always a place where you can make the difference. So if revenue management is your passion, then don't give up, because eventually demand, like in any other past cycles, will come back. Funner times will be back, more exciting times for a revenue manager will be back. They are tough right now, I can't say differently, because it's about heads to beds and pretty much that's it. But the cycle will upturn eventually, and there will always be opportunities where you can make the difference. and for sure this is the industry.
Brilliant. Another great sentence there. As long as there is a perishable inventory, there is a way to optimize it. That's brilliant. Yeah. So there's a never-ending story, a never-ending cycle, obviously.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Good. Okay. Well, these are the questions that I have for you. So thank you again so very much for your time. All the info. I was taking 3 pages of notes, which I'll post there.
Gosh, did I talk that much?
No. But great sentences. That's the point. It's like loads of key sentences in there and ideas. So which is great. I'll post it when I upload it. So in the text as well. And as I was saying, it was a pleasure. So thank you, Elga, so very much for your time.
No, my pleasure. I'll be in touch whenever you like.
That was all for now. Hope you found it useful. Remember that you have more information on our website www.torresconsulting.co.uk, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and Twitter. Stay well. Goodbye for now.